Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, July 6th edition. A familiar face on the other end of the line. Mike Carmin joins us. When we have big, weighty, heavy issues, we bring in the bullpen. Mike Carmin, he talks, goes one-on-one. We're going to talk about his conversation with Mike Bobinski and where this all may be headed, or how many zillion questions that are still to be answered. Mike did do an interview with Mike Bobinski last week and has also written already on the site a little story about tickets in part one, which was on the site on Friday. Mike, I know this is the highlight of your day, but we're glad that you're joining us on this Saturday simulcast.
Just don't compare me to the Cubs bullpen.
Yeah, I was going to say, offline, we were talking about, I had a Tuesday night visit with my two grown children, which was a great night in Wrigley Field. Not so good for the Cubs. The Cubs lost to the Phillies. So my daughter's a Phillies fan, and she was happy. And she acts like a Phillies fan sometimes too, by the way. Santa Claus came by and she booed him, and that was okay. But the Cubs as of Tuesday night are still struggling a little bit, but I've got my Cubs shirt on, though that was not the one I wore last night. But Mike, it is an interesting time of July 1 has come and gone. Now Washington and Oregon and USC and UCLA are officially part of the Big Ten. I wanted to first get to you talked about Mike Bobinski about the travel. Anything surprise you on that? Just the fact that I guess it surprised me a little bit that soccer and some of these other sports doesn't seem like they've made a lot of moves to curb the travel. Maybe it's a bigger issue or not as big an issue as I thought it would be. But Bobinski seemed to say, yes, it's going to be more expensive, but it is what it is. How do you view that?
Well, I mean, you knew that the price would go up to get to these places, yes. Not only because how far they are away. And you have to remember, Purdue's coming from the middle of the country.
Yeah.
About Rutgers, Maryland, Penn State, and these places that, those schools are either going to Oregon and Washington or they're going to UCLA and USC. I mean, it's one or the other. You're not going to both, but you're going to one or the other. So that's going to raise the cost. But with the new TV deal that was put in place, that is going to take care of the travel part of it that was built into that. So that's not a huge fear, but the fact that you're putting an extra $500,000 into your budget is not insignificant, because that's $500,000 you could use elsewhere. So I mean, the fact that it's more expensive is not that. The thing that interests me more was just how they kind of put this together. I thought at one point they were like, all right, all of Purdue teams are going to go to Oregon and Washington in year one, and then Oregon and Washington are going to come back to West Lafayette in year two, and then Purdue's going to go to USC and UCLA. And I thought there might be a common theme in that the Big Ten put together, but it's not. It's just the way. I guess it's just the way it worked out. So those, at least in the fall and basketball, those teams are going to Oregon and Washington this year. Now we'll see what happens in the spring. And the other part of this that I'm interested to see is just on the men's basketball schedule and the women's basketball schedule.
Yeah.
Can they get out there to play both teams? Will TV allow them to get out there and play both teams on the same trip? That's the goal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because you would assume that, but it may not. That is an assumption that is not necessarily reality yet. Is that the way you believe?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just, anytime TV gets its hands on stuff, they're going to manipulate it to their own advantage in what they want. And it could be similar with USC and UCLA coming here this year. Will they both come here in a span of 4 days? Yeah. And with the way the Big Ten does its basketball schedules now, they are mandated to have 2 days off between games during the conference season. So when Purdue goes to Oregon and Washington, both men and women, it's a 5-day trip. It's a 5-day trip, maybe longer depending on, the circumstances. It could be longer based on TV. So not a lot surprised me. It's just the logistics and all that, trying to put this thing together. And, I think they'll look at it as time goes on and see what needs to be adjusted and how that all works. But in 2 years, we could be faced with, more travel based on what else happens in the national landscape.
And an ever moving thing, to say the least. Yes, we don't know. We know that USC and UCLA are coming to Mackey Arena for the men. It is going to be. Did you get the sense from Bobinski that? And he's a pretty stoic guy. I mean, I think any athletic director has to have a head on a swivel, but I guess you take it as it comes. I mean, there's no sign of being overly flustered. He's kind of just dealing with it as it comes and controlling what he can control. That seems to be the Mike Bobinski we know. Is that a fair assessment, or did he hang up did you go offline and he started throwing things? how was he? I don't think that's the case, but how was he on that?
If he was going to throw things, he would have thrown them at me. But no, I mean, you have to also understand, they've had a year to really get this together. And the fear was, how do you put this puzzle together, going coast to coast, 18 teams, being able to schedule the way that you want to schedule, by playing conference teams as much as possible. But there's a limitation to that. So, I think the Big Ten worked hard to try to make this as reasonable of a travel schedule as they could, but there's going to be problems. The one that sticks out to me, it doesn't deal with Purdue. It deals with Rutgers playing at USC, I believe, in football.
Yeah.
It's an 11 o'clock Eastern time start on a Friday night. So Rutgers is not getting back to New Jersey until like Wednesday of next week of the next week. So it's
by wagon train. Yeah.
It's things like that are going to cause some issues with people. But again, once TV gets its hands on things, they dictate those start times. It just, that doesn't seem like a really a viable situation for the long term when you do things like that. But again, they've had a year to do it, and along the way, he's gotten updates on how it's going to look. And I think at this point, you just have to accept what it is and move on. Yeah,
no question. Mike Carmin, we are grateful for his work as he's worked with obviously basketball and football with us and all that. He also has the Greater Lafayette Sports Report. Excellent coverage of women's basketball, but other topics that pertain to Lafayette sports. A great thing if you want to subscribe to that. Consider, how do they do that? What's the best way for someone if they want your daily newsletter electronically? What do people need to do?
Just it's part of the Substack network. It's substack.com, and you can go on there and search for me or Greater Lafayette Sports Report, and eventually it'll come up, and all you have to do is push a button, put your email in, and subscribe. It costs nothing right now, which I know that's a wonderful price for you.
It is.
It's probably what you want to pay me. But
not true, but no, and it's good stuff, and it's really great coverage. Nobody covers Purdue women's basketball, especially like Mike does. Also, thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, A11 Bistro. We appreciate them too. And you can also become a member of GoldandBlack.com. You can look at the bottom of their YouTube here. Plenty of ways to do that. Special deals. We do charge for our content. And I'm guessing Mike Carmin will work his way into that. Maybe someday. We'll see how that goes as well. But it's quality content, to say the least. All right. You posted something on Friday. You've kind of unfurled this whole 22% or $22 million pay for play situation. It is a story that doesn't we don't have a clear conclusion of how it's all going to work out. Or
how do you see that at this point in terms of when talking to Mike, the issue, a lot of the same issues are still at hand.
Yeah, I mean, you have to back up a little bit and kind of understand what's going on with the lawsuit. And what the NCAA has done is kind of combined all these lawsuits that they were never going to win into one case, and it's going to be an antitrust thing. And basically, they're going to pay damages in the past. They're going to pay damages to the current athletes. And that money is going to come from the NCAA. It's going to come from the schools that are electing to be part of the lawsuit, and try to fix this thing as best they can. And from Purdue's standpoint, one of the questions I posed to Mike was, you're getting less money from the NCAA. You have $22 million that you have to come up with. How do you marry those two things together and still have an operational athletic department? And there are no clear answers to that right now, other than in Purdue's case, they will need help from the university in some fashion financially. It's not really as much as university writing them a check and say, hey, here's $22 million, go pay your athletes. It's not going to be like that. There'll be some things that have to get worked out between the university and athletic department to make sure Purdue has enough money in its budget to do that. I know the common theme is, oh, they're getting all this TV money, so that should take care of it. Well, that, to me, athletic departments work on a break-even basis every fiscal year. What comes in goes out. Staffing, salaries, travel, recruiting. I mean, the whole thing.
Facilities, yeah.
Yeah. So that money's, in my mind, has been spoken for. So you need a new revenue source to now pay your athletes as part of the revenue sharing agreement. And and this is a judgment. This is a binding thing. This is something that you just can't say, well, we're just not going to do that. No, if you're going to be in the game, you have to do it. And Purdue needs some help. Other schools are going to need some help from their university to make this all happen. That number goes up every year. It's not just here's $22 million for the next 10 years. No, it goes up every year, just like inflation and everything else. There's a escalator in this thing. And for Purdue, it should, assuming it all gets worked out and you can solve the Title IX issues and all that kind of stuff, it should benefit a place like Purdue, which, as we all know, in the NIL game, Purdue was not a front runner.
Yeah.
In that. And you have a salary cap for everybody, and that should work in Purdue's favor. Now you can sell the things that Purdue is used to selling: its facilities, its education, its coaching staff, its tradition, its all those things that Purdue has leaned on throughout its history. That you bring that back into the fold now. Yeah, yes, you're going to get paid, but here are the other things that can potentially help make your decision better, easier, to help separate from other schools. Will there be NIL involved? Yes, there's still NIL out there, but there's supposed to be a mechanism in place that makes sure that it's not just dropping a bag of money at somebody's feet and saying, you get this, now here's the real money that we're going to give you. No, all that's going to have to go through a clearinghouse and be approved to make sure that you're playing on the up and up. And we've heard this song and dance before. The penalties are supposed to be quicker and harder if they're caught, but I'll believe that when I see it. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in this thing, and I would encourage people to really read what Mike Bobinski is saying. I mean, we don't have all the answers yet. This will probably be a two-part story as far as we'll deal with, the first part of it, and then deal with some other issues too that go along with this, and just understand that there are some clear answers, but there's still a lot more to be decided, because this is going to take effect in the fall of 25. So we're not that far away from it, and they don't have full answers yet. And to me, they're late in the game, in my opinion, because you're recruiting to the 25 class in football, and this situation affects them a lot. It affects your current players that have eligibility left after this coming year as well. So there's a lot to do, a lot to figure out, and how it all eventually looks is still kind of a big question mark.
critical thinker that you are, though. You are, I mean, and Mike Bobinski has said this, you know, he thinks it does give an opportunity to level the playing field. I look at it and it does, you know, still the big boys can still do what they're doing in the NIL world. Is it going to be the NCAA that's going to police this? I mean, how is that? That's the plan, I presume. But I mean, talking about things going through the clearinghouse, you're talking about NIL money that's outside of the payments, right? Correct?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's going to the NFL has a system set up for sponsorships.
Yeah.
All that has to go through to make sure it's legit. It's not doing something to the salary cap for each team, that it's not, you know, you're not playing around with those numbers. So it's supposed to be a similar situation where I have this NIL deal that I've been approached about. I submit the information to this clearinghouse. They approve it. They check it out, make sure it's on the up and up. And then whether you get it or not is kind of up to them. And it's up to this group to red flag what might be suspicious or bad actors in the whole thing. And it should benefit everybody. So, I mean, but you know, athletes that do social media posts, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, they'll still be allowed to do all that. I mean, there's not that much has not changed. So they'll be able to still make money off that on top of whatever salary, whatever money they get from the athletic department in the revenue sharing thing. So all that will exist. They're just trying to stamp out, you know, just here's money to come play for us type of thing. And it'll happen. It'll be out there, but you have to deter it by harsh penalties, and you have to do it quickly. It can't be, oh, we'll get to this in 2 years. No, it has to be immediate. It has to be, you know, everybody should, you know, have a fair situation to explain themselves, but they've got to come down hard on bad actors in this situation, and it's got to be quick, and the punishment has to be real.
Yeah. Any sense, though, when you look at that there'll be contracts, or that the ability to the transfer portal world, anything that you see changing in the near term, or is it going to be still free agency every year for athletes to be able to go from school to school? And what's the things that can help nail that down? Because a lot of folks feel like that's as big a problem, if not bigger, than the NIL issue.
Well, it is a big problem, but I think we're now in an era of free agency that you can go as many times as you want. You can move around as much as you want. I don't think there's really anything that's going to slow that down. The last thing the NCAA now wants to do is get in the court again.
Yeah.
And you can't really challenge.
Yeah, it gets down to the whole thing of being able to limit income. I mean, that's what it comes to.
And the NCAA is getting out of that business. They've lost so many lawsuits. They've lost so much money that if they would have come around to this quicker, we would be in the system that we need to be in. But they're stubborn, like a lot of big businesses, and they don't want to give up their money. But the amount of money they've spent on lawyer fees over the last 2 or 3 decades would fund 100 third world countries. And then all those countries wouldn't have to be wearing T-shirts from
yeah, exactly,
from championships. But I don't think the portal situation will change because it's easily challenged. But you would hope that you pick the schools for the right reason. You are going to get paid. That maybe lessens the opportunity for you to move, or at least the temptation to move.
Yeah, if there's
every school has the same amount of money.
Yeah,
every school is going to have the same cap, 22 million to use. Now, how those schools use that money, I don't see a situation where everybody is paid the same, but how do you determine who gets what, and who's in charge of determining who gets what? I mean, as I said, they've got a lot of things to figure out, and to me, a short time to get it figured out. And if you don't like your deal, then yeah, you can look elsewhere. I mean, there'll still be portal rules as far as timing and when you can get in and stuff like that. Or at least I think there will be. Maybe not. But I don't think this will change how the portal is operating. I think athletes will be free to move when they want to.
And it'll be up to the school to determine then if they're going to pay hockey, if they have hockey or women's basketball or men's basketball. So there can be some variance in terms of, if you're a school that has a great hockey program or a great women's basketball program, maybe less of a pot to share.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's similar to NIL where you have to consider the locker room dynamic.
Yeah.
If word gets out, and word will get out, these three players are getting paid more than I am or somebody else, that's not going to sit well, especially if it comes down to what are these players producing at a high level, and things like that. To me, and I broach this subject. I mean, as you know, and everybody that's watching this understands, Purdue's donor base has never truly bought into NIL, and that's fine, but you have to go find your $22 million somewhere, and some of these people are going to be asked to jump into the process again. Now, whether they do it or they view it differently because it's actually coming from the school, I have no idea how that's going to be received. I don't think it hasn't been received well across the board. Now, obviously, Purdue has an NIL program that has been able to fund some stuff, so there are people jumping in and doing it. But where does that $22 million come from? And you're going to need some help from outside to make that happen. You need to get help inside, and when I say inside, you need to get help from the university to make this happen. But you're also going to need some help from the outside to really fulfill that, because that's a number that comes off the top of the budget every year. I mean, it's the new line of item expense right there. You got $22 million on your expense sheet even before you open the door for your next fiscal year. And where's that money coming from? And how do you distribute it? I mean, there's going to be, as I mentioned, roster limits too with some of these sports. How that looks, I don't think anybody knows yet. So I mean, we're definitely entering probably a new world of college athletics that is going to look a lot different. And as they get deeper into this, and there'll be some schools that struggle to come up with $22 million extra dollars. At what point does the subject of potentially cutting sports, cutting staff? I know Texas A&M has eliminated some staff in its athletic department in anticipation of this. So there's a lot to be decided as far as exactly how this looks once we get into it. But the upcoming school year will be business as we've known it the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So I mean, there'll be no changes in 24-25. The first wave of change will come in 25 and 26.
Yeah, it is. And, Purdue has always touted itself as one of the few schools that takes no state funding to run its athletic department. That, in some ways, I understand it can be an accounting deal, but does that change now? Because, I guess that $22 million that may come in part from the university, does that change that dynamic in your view?
I don't think, by the letter, it changes the dynamic. I don't think they're going to go ask the General Assembly for, hey, can we have $22 million to pay our athletes? No, and I don't foresee it happening this way. The university is going to have to help out by, I believe, taking some expense items away from athletics, something that they can absorb on their own, and something that, as we get into this, that when athletics has a good year financially, you kind of pay some of that back. You you try to make good on it. But the other another potential revenue source is, I don't believe students are charged an athletic fee at Purdue. I don't believe they are.
They are. Well, they were. I don't. It's
Right.
a relatively small fee. They do pay for the tickets.
Right.
For certain sports, yes.
But could the university decide to tack on a whatever fee to the student body for however they want to mask it to help do this? So, I mean, there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. And I just hope whatever they do, they are transparent about it, because everybody knows this is coming. Everybody knows the situation. And I don't believe you can sit there and hide and say, oh, we're not going to tell you where all this, how we're going to help them or anything like that. I think they need to be ahead of the game and say, this is how we're going to help manage this situation, to help people understand, why, if there's an ask for more money down the line, at least people have an understanding of what's going on. And it's best if the university kind of explains that, and at least everybody knows what they're doing to try to help this situation. I don't believe there was a hesitation from the president or the board to say Purdue's not going to do this.
No, I agree.
I think they probably thought, okay, this is what Purdue needs to do, and now they have to do it. I mean, athletics is such a big deal at Purdue and other places. It opens a lot of windows to the university. I mean, I think they have another monster freshman class coming in. So things like that are, that's a direct result of what happened in March with the Final Four with Purdue. So they've been on a big stage. You're going to get more visibility. You're going to get more attention. And the university benefits fully from having the athletic department that it has, and the view that Purdue Athletics does it in their world the right way. And that I think that hits home with people. I think that is a benefit when you're trying to do stuff like this. Purdue's not asking out of ordinary stuff here. I mean, this is now the price that you have to pay to have a Big Ten major college athletics program, and it's the reality. It's what it's going to be. And you have to have people help you, and this is just what it is now, at least for potentially a 10-year period, because that's what the agreement will. It's what the agreement is supposed to be.
I don't think we're going back either. And yet it is. There's a lot of head on a swivel that's going to need to be dealt with here over the next year to get. Because I just think it does get back to definition. You got to somehow, or the term guardrails, we keep hearing that somehow, some way. You got to understand what the rules are and how it's going to work. And yes, I think Purdue has its ability, culture, all the things it tries to sell from an athletic standpoint, not just in men's basketball, but everywhere. Ryan Walters is talking about that as well, that you got to hope that that's going to keep you. And yet you've got, like I said, we've talked about this too. You have Purdue, you just put X number of $1 million in your football stadium. They have to play football, and they've got to bring this year only 6 games, but you got to bring that event to town 6 or 7 times a year to be able to do the kind of things the universities have to do to boost enrollment. I guess that's what it all. I always have said I want to know what that formula is that they plug and chug that says that athletics makes it work, but. There was a time, I remember Mitch Daniels even talking about, we got to slow this whole thing down. That was 2013. Now it's 2024, and there's no slowing down. But my last question, do you see a Chicago University of Chicago in this deal? I mean, I understand it's a totally different world, but Chicago obviously was in the Big Ten until mid 1940s, decided no more. It's a kind of a funny comparison, but do you see there's so much money to be had? Can somebody is there an opt-out possibility? Would you bet the over-under, or bet if you had to bet, would there be somebody in the Power 4 or 5 or whatever term you want to use that will say we just can't do this over time? Do you think they're all in?
I think initially everybody will be in, and then as you get into it, there'll probably have to be some decisions that are made. Now, some of that, with your lower level Division I schools, they may not be able to keep up with this. And there's just so many things that have to get played out and get answered for that to happen. But I do see over time, potentially some schools just drifting away from it because they can't afford to do it. They just cannot do it. Now, by not doing it, you are leaving some money on the table. But, again, it comes down to what your university wants and all that. I think initially everybody's in, but over time, I'm not sure it stays that way. And a couple other pieces to this that need to get worked out, since the majority of the revenue, that the formula that they use, gate receipts, sponsorships, and TV money, roughly 90% of that is generated by football.
Yeah.
So does that mean football gets 90% of this revenue?
Yeah.
And then you have Title IX implications, how that all looks and works out. Is it based on your Title IX or male-female ratio at the university, in your athletic department, in other areas? So I don't think I don't know if it'll be a dollar for dollar thing. What you pay here, you have to pay here. I don't know for sure what it'll be. And there's some other court cases out there that are not tied to this that still could play a role in what eventually happens with this. You have the Dartmouth men's basketball team that have formed a union, and some other things that are going on across the country. How does that factor into this? Everybody's going to want their piece. Everybody's going to want their piece of the money. So but I do think if it works, it does create some clarity for college athletics. It keeps, whether you like it or not, it keeps the NCAA in place, because it gives them a structure to do things, and you have some stability there. But how it eventually looks, it still remains to be seen, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some significant hiccups along the way to slow this down a little bit. Again, I think 25, 26 is pretty optimistic for all this to fall into place, but if that's the only job you're doing, then you got time to do it.
A lot of key definitions need to be figured out. The word participation, what that means in Title IX words, all these kind of things that we asked Mike Carmin to solve this during this podcast. He did not. He failed. He only brought up more questions. But no, it's actually very well done, very interesting, and I look forward to part 2 of your, actually part 3 of your discussion with Mike Bobinski on our site as well. Thanks.
The other thing I'll add is,
go ahead, by all means.
This was a question that was brought up, and this is a question I think people have. What does this do to like facility projects that are on the table? I mean, Ross-Ade has a phase 2 that it would like to get to, and that has it kind of just it goes into the background just for a little bit until they figure out exactly what all this is going to be. And then once they figure out, this part of it with the lawsuit and revenue sharing, then maybe they can proceed with what they plan for for Ross-Ade Stadium. In Purdue's favor in this is they don't have, in my opinion, they don't have a lot of facility questions right now. Yes, phase 2 is important for the stadium, but it's not like you have to do it today. I mean, they have the clubhouse at the golf course is going to be up and running here over the next year or so. But other than that, I mean, Mackey Arena is fine. Baseball, softball, all those facility things, the IAF seem to be in good shape. So they're not in a position where they have to build something right now. The question does, as you move through this and you want to redo some things, you want to redo a locker room, you want to redo, how do you go about it, knowing that, all right, we still have 22 or whatever it is at the time that we still have to pay our athletes. And does that what becomes more important when you're recruiting athletes now? Is it how much am I going to get from the university, or do I have a neon sign above my locker that spews my name out so everybody can see it? That what becomes important in the whole recruiting game at that point to these future athletes.
Going to be an interesting thing to watch. At food court or food that's opening up as well.
Right.
I agree with you, with the exception maybe of the Purdue track and field, and God only knows where the sports like that will be in time. We're not saying that that's going away, but I think everything is on the table for down the road. You just don't know where all this is going to land. So, all right, we're going to land this podcast and thank Mike Carmin for taking the time again. Greater Lafayette Sports Report. Of course, you'll watch him and look for him this year to all the stuff he does for GoldandBlack.com. We're grateful for that. Thank you to the Union Club Hotel, Boiler Bar, 811 Bistro. We appreciate their support. Brian Newbert will be back from his long standing vacation in Colorado. I'm sure he'll pontificate about something. He'll be out recruiting, watching basketball this week as well. So look for that on the site. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hope you had a good 4th of July, and we'll see you next time on our Saturday Simulcast.